I was born with stunning beauty. When I was born, doctors and nurses were instantly speechless. Every day, long lines formed outside the nursery, with people craning their necks to catch a glimpse. The media reported on it for 3 days straight, and I trended online for a month. In preschool, kids would fight over the spot next to me during nap time. My parents, frustrated, moved me from one school to another. Until I turned 5, and my inner foodie awakened. In just a few years, I ate myself into a little ball. Looking at my chubby face, my parents smiled with relief. A little chubby is fine, as long as Summer is happy. From then on, my life was peaceful and calm. Until a class dinner after the SATs, when Scarlett Lane, the prettiest girl in class, chuckled. They say every chubby person is a diamond in the rough. Summer Reed would probably be gorgeous if she lost weight. One of the boys even chimed in. If Summer loses weight and is half as pretty as Scarlett, I'll ask her out. Oh, just losing weight won't be enough, Summer would have to go under the knife. Their words didn't stir a single emotion in me. I just looked down, bothered by a message from my mom. The doctor said being overweight isn't good for your health, Summer. You have to start dieting today. Otherwise, Mom's taking away all your dolls. I sighed. For the sake of my precious dolls, this weight had to go. Snickers kept ringing out in the restaurant. Everyone saw me with my head down, not speaking, and assumed I'd been hit where it hurt, too ashamed to utter a sound. A few classmates exchanged glances, a playful look flashing across their faces, and continued. I heard Scarlett and Summer both got into NYU's fine arts department, right? So you'll be classmates in college too. NYU is lucky, it's about to welcome a super beauty. Scarlett's definitely going to be the school queen for the next 4 years. Summer, don't you dare say you were high school classmates with Scarlett when college starts, you'll embarrass her. Scarlett was sitting across from me, a smug smirk on her lips, but she said humbly. Oh, don't say that, guys. NYU's fine arts department is known for its beautiful students, and who knows, maybe Summer will be even prettier than me when she slims down. As soon as she finished speaking, the table erupted in a chorus of snickers. Maya Green, my desk mate and friend, couldn't take it anymore and nudged my arm under the table. I finally pulled my attention away from my phone, looking blankly at everyone. Huh? What's up? Just then, the waiter pushed the door open. I sniffed, my eyes lighting up. Steak. My favorite. As soon as the dish was on the table, I couldn't wait to grab a large piece and happily started munching. The dining table fell silent for a moment, then everyone burst into laughter. Scarlett, you overestimated her. Summer. She'll never lose weight in her life. And that whole every chubby person is a diamond in the rough thing? It's just a load of crap. An ugly duckling is just an ugly duckling, no matter how much weight they lose. Summer, maybe eat a little less. You might never find a boyfriend, you know. Maya fumed, clenching her fists, about to retort on my behalf. I grabbed her hand and put a piece of rib in her bowl. Maya, try this. It's super delicious. Seeing my calm face, completely unfazed by their words, a flicker of resentment flashed in Scarlett's eyes. Her gaze landed on a certain face, and she smiled as if by accident. Summer won't be looking for a boyfriend, otherwise, Dylan will get mad. I looked at her strangely. What does my dating life have to do with Dylan Hayes? But as soon as she said that, a few classmates instantly caught on and started cheering loudly. Oh yeah, didn't Dylan often discuss problems with Summer? Summer's not good at math, and Dylan even tutored her. I heard their neighbors. Aren't they practically childhood sweethearts? Hee, is our class about to have a new couple? Mocking glances fell on Dylan, who was seated diagonally from me. He lowered his head, his fair face turning a little red. Everyone kept cheering, asking if he was shy. I frowned slightly. After moving to this city in middle school, Dylan became our neighbor. Dylan's parents were busy with work and no one cooked at home. So my parents would often invite him over for dinner. He was very grateful to us, and when he learned I wasn't good at math, he offered to tutor me. But all that was just out of neighborly and classmate kindness. How did it sound so trashy coming out of their mouths? I was about to protest when Dylan suddenly slammed his fork down, his face flushing with furious embarrassment. I just felt sorry for her. Who would ever like that pig, Summer? As his words hung in the air, the entire private room fell into a dead silence. The words I was about to say to explain for him caught in my throat, and I silently swallowed them back down. The silence lasted for about 10 seconds. Everyone exchanged bewildered glances. Suddenly, someone snickered. We were just kidding, Dylan. Don't take it seriously. They said it was a joke, but their faces showed a satisfied expression. Yeah, our Dylan is so handsome, he can get any girlfriend he wants. Why would he ever be with Summer? Someone even pretended to comfort me, patting my shoulder. Don't be sad, Summer. Scarlett concealed the satisfaction in her eyes, feigning annoyance at Dylan for a few words. Then she picked up a piece of fried chicken and put it in my bowl. Summer, don't worry about it so much. Eat more. But I put down my fork and started wiping my mouth. I'm done. You guys carry on. I'm leaving. Actually, I was only 5 parts full. But due to my mother's threat, I had to painfully give it up. As I walked towards the door, I passed Dylan's seat. Brushing past him, I said flatly, "Dylan, you're pretty spineless." His face instantly went pale. He wanted to distance himself from me. I understood. After all, in this class, anyone who was friends with me would be maliciously targeted by Scarlett and her clique. But what truly angered me was that not long before college entrance exams, he had sworn to me. He hated Scarlett's crew. He would firmly stand by me and would never do anything to hurt a classmate like them. But in that moment, I realized how much he hated being associated with me. Forget it. Just consider it seeing a friend's true colors. As soon as I left the private room, my friend Maya Green ran after me. She hooked her arm through mine and said, "I don't want to eat with them either." "You didn't get enough to eat, did you, Summer? Come on, let's go to the food truck park." I heard some new food trucks opened, and their loaded fries are to die for. I wiped away the drool that was about to escape, and reluctantly refused. No more eating. I'm starting my diet. Maya's eyes widened. This was the first time I'd ever refused her food invitation. She thought of something and said anxiously, "Summer, don't listen to them. I really always thought you were beautiful, you." I smiled and cut her off, explaining that my mother had issued the threat. When she learned it was my own decision, she finally breathed a sigh of relief, patting my shoulder and saying, "Go for it. I'll be supporting you from the sidelines. I'm 5 feet 7 inches, and my current weight is 170 pounds. According to international BMI, if I lose weight down to around 120 to 130 pounds, I'll be in the healthy range." I spent a day creating a diet plan. Mom reviewed it and nodded in satisfaction. "Don't worry, Summer. Mom will strictly follow the meal plan and make your diet food." Dad, however, looked pained. "Just a few vegetable leaves, will that be enough to eat?" "Summer, maybe we shouldn't lose weight after all." Unfortunately, he didn't finish before Mom pinched his arm. "Did you forget what the doctor said? Summer is already mildly obese. It'll affect her health if this continues." Dad, however, looked worried. "Did you forget about Summer when she was little? What if she really loses weight and then?" Mom recalled those days. She had to leave an hour early every day to pick me up from preschool. Otherwise, I might very well be taken home by other parents. Our phone was set to block unknown numbers. Otherwise, from morning till night, it would be ringing off the hook with strangers trying to get close to our family. But I was still too young back then to remember much. My parents exchanged glances, and finally, they both agreed to let me lose weight first. They say girls change a lot as they grow up. What if she grows up, not beautiful? They just hoped I could live a normal life. The next morning at 5, I went for a run. An hour later, I reached a park and was about to stop and rest. Suddenly, I heard a familiar voice, filled with disbelief. "Summer?" Walking towards me was Scarlett, dressed in a workout outfit, her hair slightly damp, clearly having just finished a run herself. She looked me up and down, suspiciously asking, "You're not on a diet, are you?" I ignored her. After resting for a few minutes, I started running again. She stared at my retreating back, a dark current swirling in her eyes. A few days later, someone in the high school Snapchat group suddenly posted a video. In the clip, I was running by the river. Sweat drenched my top, and the fat on my body jiggled slightly with each stride. I was so tired my lips were pale, and my bangs stuck to my forehead, looking quite disheveled. Soon, someone turned the video into a GIF, and then someone else made it into a meme. What is Summer doing? Isn't it obvious? Summer's obviously dieting. OMG, I never saw her diet for 3 years in high school. Now that college entrance exams are over, she's dieting. Did our words get to her? Summer, sorry. We really didn't mean to say you were fat. After sending that message, the person followed it with another meme of me, captioned, "I truly regret it." Then, the screen was filled with ha-ha-ha-has. Suddenly, someone posted. What else could she be dieting for at this crucial moment? To find a boyfriend in college, duh. I thought Summer only cared about food. Turns out she actually listened to our advice. I knew immediately that Scarlett had told everyone about my morning run. And then a bunch of bored guys came to stake me out. No wonder I felt like someone was watching me this morning. I was unaffected by their mockery. Instead, I felt a little grateful for the motivation they gave me to keep going. Although I didn't know what I would look like when I lost weight. But based on what my parents occasionally said about my childhood, I thought I was not ugly. For a while after that, whenever I passed that park during my morning runs, would always see a few classmates. They would shout at me, "Go, Summer. Believe in yourself, you're a diamond in the rough." If you ignored the mockery in their eyes, you might actually think they were cheering me on. But their interest came and went quickly. They were soon distracted by other things and stopped appearing. After consistently doing this for a month, I successfully lost 10 pounds. Although my face was still chubby, my features and contours looked much smoother than before. My body also felt lighter. Sometimes, my parents would stare at my face, a worried expression inexplicably appearing. I scratched my head. Were they worried I was taking diet pills? In mid-July, I got a gym membership. I would go there to work out for 3 hours every day. One day, as I left the house, I unexpectedly ran into Dylan, whom I hadn't seen in a long time. He was just coming out to take out the trash, and he paused when he saw me, blurting out, "Summer, you've lost some weight." I gave him a distant nod and walked towards the bus stop. He hesitated, then followed me. "Summer, I've been wanting to apologize to you about that day. I'm sorry. I really wasn't thinking." I hummed in acknowledgement. His words hadn't actually hurt me much. I had just used them to see someone's true colors. He continued to follow me. "My school is right next to NYU. We can still hang out during college, right?" Seeing his face full of guilt and his sincere attitude, I suddenly remembered what my mom had told me. Dylan's family situation wasn't just that his parents were busy with work. His parents had divorced a long time ago, and neither of them really wanted to take care of him. He had an aloof personality and few friends. I was one of the few people he could talk to. I sighed and didn't stop him from continuing to follow me. He followed me to the gym and watched me expertly turn on the treadmill, surprised. "Summer, it looks like you're really determined." Then he also turned on the treadmill next to mine and smiled. "I've been wanting to work out lately too. I'll join you." I didn't refuse. He paid for his own membership, so it wasn't my business. After that, he chatted with me intermittently. I occasionally responded with a few bland words. I had only been working out for a while when I heard several click-click sounds nearby. I turned my head and saw a few familiar faces, Scarlett's crew. Scarlett stood nearby, watching us with a sweet smile. The person taking photos teased, "Look what I caught. Dylan and Summer. Are you guys on a date?" Dylan fell silent. He got off the treadmill and walked towards the group. I thought he was going to grab their phones. But to my surprise, he walked straight up to Scarlett, saying helplessly yet dotingly, "Didn't you tell me to get close to her first? Why are you here?" Scarlett wrapped her arms around his arm and smirked. "Because I was jealous. Who could stand seeing their boyfriend working out with another girl?" The others burst into laughter, seeing my stunned expression. "How did you get exposed so quickly? We wanted to watch the show for a bit longer." "Yeah, don't just shatter Summer's beautiful fantasy like that. She probably just thought Dylan liked her." Dylan looked at me coldly and said, "Summer, don't misunderstand. The person I like is Scarlett. I hope you don't harbor any unrealistic ideas about me." My mouth twitched. I started to wonder if they were missing a few brain cells. Not wanting to deal with them, I decided to leave. Scarlett suddenly walked over and grabbed my hand, saying guiltily, "Summer, I'm so sorry. We didn't mean to." I pulled my hand away. The next second, she wailed and fell to the ground. Her eyes reddened as she said, "It hurts so much." Dylan angrily rushed forward and pushed me away. "Summer, what are you doing?" Everyone in the gym stopped, looking over in surprise. When they saw the pretty girl on the floor, seemingly pushed by me, a chorus of indignant voices rose. "Ugly people always cause trouble. She's just jealous that Scarlett's prettier than her. She's trying to lose weight, but she won't ever be half as pretty as Scarlett." Scarlett was helped up, looking at me with a mocking smirk. I stared at her expressionlessly. "Scarlett, is this fun?" Scarlett leaned closer, whispering in my ear with a smile. "Oh, it's a blast. You didn't know? Being pretty means you can get away with anything. Too bad you'll never get to experience it." With that, she walked away triumphantly, surrounded by her adoring group. She had once led the class in isolating a freckled girl, even bullying her in the girls' restroom. I had stopped her. After that girl transferred, Scarlett turned her animosity towards me. There were still over 2 months until school started. Scarlett would definitely find ways to cause me trouble. I was afraid I'd eventually lose my temper and actually get into a fight with her. I thought, maybe I should suggest to Mom that we go live at Grandma's in the countryside. There was no gym there. But there were natural lakes that could be used as swimming pools. And all sorts of winding mountain paths for exercise. The food was fresh fruits and vegetables Grandma picked from the garden, with no additives. Nutritious and healthy. For the next 2 months, I began intensive training. The fat on my body shed at a visible rate. Almost every so often, Grandma and Grandpa would stare at my face in a daze. When I reached 140 pounds, Grandma held my hand, sounding a little panicked. "Summer, that's enough. Any more and it'll be dangerous." But I was already enjoying it, smiling. "Don't worry, Grandma, I won't get too thin. My goal is 125 pounds. Grandma sighed. She wasn't worried about me being too thin. In a flash, it was enrollment day. Scarlett confidently walked through the school gates, pulling her suitcase and flipping her hair. As soon as she appeared, many upperclassmen eagerly rushed over to help her with her luggage. She handed all her bags to them, idly scrolling through her phone. Suddenly, a message popped up in the high school Snapchat group. "OMG. Is this even summer anymore?" Then someone posted a photo. The moment she saw the picture, Scarlett froze. The screen of Scarlett Lane's phone buzzed, the harsh vibration cutting through the humid late August air of Washington Square Park. Around her, 3 NYU upperclassmen, eager to impress the striking freshman with the designer suitcase, were competing to carry her bags. Scarlett had been basked in their attention, her lips curved in that practiced, effortless smile she had spent years perfecting. Then, she looked down. The high school Snapchat group, usually a graveyard of outdated memes and occasional college updates, was blowing up. Dozens of notifications cascaded down her screen. OMG. Is this even summer anymore? No way. That's a model. You're trolling. Look. At the background. That's the Washington Square Arch. She's literally at NYU. Right now. A photo popped up. It was a candid shot, likely taken by a classmate who had spotted her near the administration building. Scarlett's fingers froze. Her breath caught in her throat, a sudden, cold weight settling in her stomach. The girl in the photo was standing under the dappled shade of an elm tree, holding a simple canvas duffel bag. She was wearing a simple, oversized white linen shirt, beige tailored shorts, and low-top sneakers. There were no designer logos, no heavy makeup, no calculated poses. Yet, she was utterly, devastatingly breathtaking. The round, soft contours that had once earned her the cruel moniker of Little Ball had melted away, leaving behind a jawline so clean and elegant it looked hand-carved from marble. Her skin was radiant, flawless, luminous, with a natural rosy flush from the warm New York morning. Her eyes, once obscured by chubby cheeks, were wide, almond-shaped, and of a deep, clear amber that seemed to catch every fragment of sunlight. Her dark hair fell in soft, healthy waves past her shoulders, moving gently with the breeze. She looked like a classical painting brought to life. She didn't just look pretty, she possessed the kind of ethereal, magnetic beauty that made the bustling, chaotic world of Manhattan seem to pause around her. Scarlett? Are you okay? Asked one of the seniors, a junior named Marcus, noticing her sudden stillness. You look like you've seen a ghost. I'm fine, Scarlett stammered, her voice tightening. She quickly locked her phone, but her heart was hammering against her ribs. It's Photoshop, she told herself, her nails digging into her palms. It has to be. Nobody loses that much weight in 3 months without looking gaunt and sickly. She probably used a dozen beauty filters. But deep down, a cold dread began to fester. She remembered the rumors about Summer's childhood. The stories of people lining up outside the nursery. The media reports. She had always dismissed them as exaggerated family legends, the desperate coping mechanisms of delusional parents raising an obese child. But what if they weren't lying? Hey, look over there, Marcus suddenly muttered, his eyes drifting past Scarlett's shoulder. His expression went vacant, his jaw slackening slightly. The other 2 upperclassmen followed his gaze, their polite, attentive smiles instantly freezing. Scarlett slowly turned around. Coming down the paved pathway, flanked by the iconic red brick buildings of NYU, was Summer. In person, the camera hadn't even done her justice. The way she walked was effortless, carrying a light grace that drew every eye in the vicinity. Passers-by, hardened New Yorkers who usually ignored everything, were turning their heads. A skateboarder drifted off the path, narrowly avoiding a bench because he was staring so hard. A tourist couple stopped mid-photo, their camera slowly tilting downward. Summer was looking at her phone, a slight, content smile on her lips. She was looking at a map of local bakeries, completely oblivious to the small storm of awe she was generating. And right beside her, walking with a stiff, pale face, was Dylan Hayes. Dylan's mind was in a state of absolute chaos. When he had arrived at the NYU registration area earlier that morning, he had expected to find Scarlett. He had spent the last 2 weeks sending her sweet texts, trying to secure his position as her official college boyfriend. Instead, he had bumped into Summer. At first, he hadn't recognized her. He had simply noticed a girl so extraordinarily beautiful that his heart had leaped into his throat. He had stepped aside to let her pass, his face flushing with a sudden, rare shyness. But then, she had looked up, her amber eyes meeting his. Oh. Hi, Dylan, she had said, her voice smooth and completely level. Hearing that familiar, calm tone come from this goddess had sent a shockwave through his entire system. His brain had short-circuited. Summer? This was the girl he had publicly called a pig? The girl he had humiliated in the gym to win points with Scarlett? Now, walking beside her, he felt an overwhelming, suffocating wave of regret. Summer, Dylan said, his voice cracking slightly. He tried to adjust his collar, suddenly hyper-aware of how sweaty his hands were. You look really different. I mean, you look amazing. I was actually hoping we'd run into each other. I've been feeling so bad about what happened at the gym. I was just under a lot of pressure, and Scarlett. Summer didn't stop walking. She didn't even look at him. She was scanning the streets for a bagel shop she had read about. It's fine, Dylan, she said mildly. No, it's not fine. Dylan protested, stepping slightly in front of her to force her to look at him. I was a jerk. But we've known each other for years, Summer. Our families are neighbors. We used to eat dinner together every week. Can we just start over? Maybe I can take you out for lunch? I know this great place nearby. Summer paused, her amber eyes turning to him. There was no anger in them. No resentment. There was only a profound, chilling emptiness. It was the look one gave to a stranger who had asked for directions in a language they didn't speak. Dylan, she said softly. I'm not mad at you. But we aren't friends. We're just people who happen to live next door to each other in another city. Please don't follow me. Before he could speak, a sharp voice cut through the air. Dylan. Scarlett was marching toward them, her face a mask of forced cheerfulness, though her eyes were burning. The three upperclassmen followed her like a tail, though their attention was already drifting entirely to Summer. There you are, Scarlett said, wrapping her arm tightly around Dylan's elbow. She glared at Summer, her eyes scanning every inch of her face, desperately. Searching for a flaw, a pimple, a scar, a double chin, anything. There was nothing. Up close, Summer's skin was like porcelain, and her collarbones elegant. Hi, Summer, Scarlett said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. Wow. You really did something to yourself. I almost didn't recognize you. Is this why you ran away to the countryside? To get some work done? The implication was clear. She wanted the upperclassmen to think Summer's transformation was the result of plastic surgery. The three seniors, however, didn't seem to care. Hi, I'm Marcus, the junior said, completely ignoring Scarlett and stepping forward with a dazzling smile. Are you a freshman in the fine arts department? 2. If you need help finding your dorm, I'd be happy to show you the way. Actually, I can carry your bag. I'm Leo, another one chimed in, pushing Marcus aside. I'm a sophomore. If you need a tour of the studios, I know all the best spots. Scarlett's face turned an ugly shade of red. She tightened her grip on Dylan's arm, expecting him to speak up, to defend her, to say something derogatory about Summer like he always did. But Dylan was silent. He was staring at Summer, his eyes filled with a desperate, longing intensity that made Scarlett's stomach churn. He didn't look at Scarlett at all. Summer looked at the eager seniors, then at Scarlett's furious face, and finally at Dylan's pathetic, pleading expression. A tiny, amused smile touched the corner of her lips. No, thank you, Summer said to the seniors, her tone polite but firm. My friend Maya is waiting for me at the dorm. Excuse me. She stepped around them, her linen shirt fluttering slightly in the breeze, leaving behind the faint, clean scent of lavender and fresh rain. The three seniors stared after her until she disappeared into the lobby of the residence hall. She's stunning, Marcus murmured, almost reverently. Scarlett let go of Dylan's arm as if she had been burned. She slapped his chest lightly, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Why were you walking with her? Why didn't you say anything? Dylan looked down, his voice hollow. I didn't know what to say. He looked back toward the dorm entrance, a heavy, sinking feeling in his chest. He had traded a priceless diamond for a piece of cheap glass, and the worst part was, the diamond didn't even care enough to hate him for it. The fine arts department at NYU was housed in an old, beautiful building with high ceilings, creaking hardwood floors, and massive arched windows that let in floods of northern light. By the second week of the semester, the initial excitement of moving in had faded into the quiet, intense rhythm of studio classes. But the gossip about Summer Reed had only grown. She had become an urban legend within the department. People called her the Mona Lisa of Studio 404. She rarely spoke, she didn't party, and she didn't post on social media. She spent her time either in the painting studio, running in the park, or exploring the city's food scene with Maya. Maya, who had ended up majoring in art history, was her constant shield. You should have seen Scarlett's face in the cafeteria today, Maya giggled as they set up their easels for the afternoon oil painting class. She tried to sit at the table with the senior gallery curators, and they literally ignored her to ask if anyone knew the girl in the white linen shirt from the freshman class. She looked like she wanted to swallow her fork. Summer laughed, squeezing a dollop of ultramarine blue onto her wooden palette. Maya, stop focusing on her. We have a critique next week. Did you finish your analysis of the Dutch Golden Age? Ugh, don't remind me, Maya groaned. But seriously, Summer, you're like a ghost. Half the guys in the sophomore class are trying to find your Instagram. And you don't even have one. I have my food blog, Summer said thoughtfully. I posted about that bakery in Nolita yesterday. Their pistachio croissants are life-changing. Yeah, but you don't show your face on it. It's just close-ups of pastries. Because the pastries are the stars, Maya. Before Maya could reply, the heavy wooden door of the studio swung open. Scarlett walked in, followed by her two new shadows, wealthy girls from the Upper East Side who did her bidding in exchange for being associated with her influencer status. Scarlett's eyes immediately locked onto Summer. Since the first day, Scarlett had been trying to regain her footing. She had started posting daily vlogs, showcasing her expensive art supplies, her designer outfits, and her effortless college life. She had managed to amass a decent following, but every time she walked into the NYU studios, she was reminded of her secondary status. No matter how much makeup she wore, or how expensive her clothes were, she couldn't replicate the quiet, arresting magnetism that Summer possessed. Naturally. Today's class was a still life study. The professor, an eccentric, gray-haired artist named Professor Vance, had set up a complex arrangement of copper pots, decaying fruit, and silk drapes in the center of the room. All right, class, Professor Vance announced, clapping his hands. Today, we are focusing on texture and light reflection. The contrast between the cold, polished copper and the soft, organic decay of the peaches. I want to see depth. I want to feel the weight of the objects. The students began to paint. Scarlett worked quickly, her brushwork precise and clean. She had been classically trained by expensive tutors since she was 10. Her technique was technically flawless, but it lacked soul. It was the work of a highly skilled copyist. Every now and then, she glanced over at Summer's easel. Summer was working with a palette knife, applying thick, bold strokes of paint. Her copper pot wasn't just a shiny circle, it gleamed with a warm, fiery intensity, reflecting the blue sky from the window in a way that felt alive. The peaches looked so ripe and heavy they seemed on the verge of slipping off the canvas. As Professor Vance walked around the room, offering critiques, he paused behind Scarlett's easel. Good technique, Scarlett, he said, scratching his beard. Clean. Neat. But a bit sterile. It feels like a photograph taken with a cheap camera. Try to find the emotion in the light. Scarlett's smile tightened. Thank you, Professor. I'll work on it. Professor Vance moved on, eventually stopping behind Summer. He stood there in silence for a long time. The entire studio grew quiet, students sneaking glances. Incredible, Vance finally whispered. The weight of the impasto, the way you've captured the heat of the copper against the cool shadow of the silk. It's dramatic, almost Caravagesque. You have a rare gift, Summer. You don't just see the world, you understand its weight. A murmur of agreement ran through the room. Scarlett's face went white. Her grip on her paintbrush tightened so hard the wood creaked. She looked at Summer, who was politely thanking the professor, and felt a toxic, boiling rage. This isn't fair, Scarlett thought, her eyes watering with frustration. She was supposed to be the fat, ugly joke. She was the pig. How did she get to have everything? The face, the body, and now the talent? As the class ended and the students began to clean their brushes, Scarlett's Upper East Side friend, Penelope, whispered in her ear. Don't worry about it, Scarlett. She's just a teacher's pet. Besides, my brother Julian is hosting the freshman gala next week. He's on the student committee. We can make sure she doesn't even get past the door. Scarlett's eyes lit up with a vicious spark. Julian Vance, coincidentally, the distant nephew of their professor, was a wealthy junior in the business school. He was handsome, incredibly influential on campus, and ran the exclusive circle that decided which freshmen were worthy of entering the high society art events. Really? Scarlett whispered back, a slow, malicious smirk returning to her lips. Can you get Julian to help us? Of course, Penelope sneered, looking over at Summer, who was happily eating a chocolate chip cookie Maya had smuggled in. Julian hates social climbers. One word from me, and she'll be the laughingstock of the department. The Freshman Fine Arts Gala was the first major social event of the semester. Held in a rented loft in Soho, it was where wealthy art patrons, senior students, and faculty gathered to scout new talent. For a freshman, getting your work displayed at the gala, or even just attending and making connections, could launch your career. Scarlett had spent a week preparing. She wore a stunning emerald green silk slip dress that accentuated her petite frame, her hair styled in sleek, modern waves. She arrived on the arm of Dylan, who was wearing a rented tuxedo. Dylan looked handsome, but his expression was distant. He had been quiet for days, his eyes constantly scanning the crowds whenever they were on campus. Scarlett knew he was looking for Summer, which only fueled her desire to destroy her. Smile, Dylan, Scarlett hissed, pinching his arm as they walked into the glittering loft. There are photographers here. Dylan forced a smile, but his mind was elsewhere. Near the entrance, Penelope and her brother, Julian Vance, were standing by the guest list. Julian was tall, dressed in a sharp, tailored black suit, with an air of aristocratic boredom. Julian, Scarlett said, greeting him with a sweet, delicate smile. Thank you so much for organizing this. It's beautiful. It's a decent turnout, Julian said smoothly, his eyes sweeping over the crowd of chic, dressed-up students. Penelope told me about your little issue. The girl from your high school who's been causing trouble? Oh, it's nothing major, Scarlett said, playing the victim. She lowered her eyes, looking vulnerable. She's had a lot of resentment toward me. Since high school. She's been spreading rumors, trying to isolate me from the department. And she's been using some very manipulative tactics to get Professor Vance's attention. Julian frowned. He prided himself on maintaining the prestige of the department. Don't worry. I've seen her name on the guest list. Summer Reed. Right? I've instructed the security at the door. Unless she has an official physical invitation, which she doesn't, because I personally intercepted her mail, she's not getting in. And if she tries to make a scene, she'll be escorted out in front of everyone. Scarlett's heart leaped with joy. Perfect. Let's see you maintain your quiet, elegant dignity when you're thrown out like a common street beggar. At that moment, a commotion began at the entrance of the loft. The heavy glass doors slid open, and a sudden hush fell over the near end of the room. The chatter of voices dipped, replaced by a ripple of whispers. Julian, Scarlett, and Dylan turned to look. Summer had arrived. She wasn't wearing an expensive designer gown. She was wearing a simple, vintage, black velvet halter dress that hugged her curves in a way that was both incredibly classy and stunningly sensual. Her collarbones were defined, her shoulders elegant, and her back was completely open, revealing smooth, radiant skin. Her dark hair was swept up in a loose, elegant chignon, leaving a few tendrils to frame her face. She wore no jewelry except for a pair of simple pearl earrings. She didn't look like a student trying to fit into a high society party. She looked like the guest of honor. Beside her was Maya, looking sharp in a tailored red pantsuit. As they stepped up to the check-in desk, Julian straightened his tie, a look of sudden, intense interest flashing in his eyes. He hadn't expected the manipulative social climber to look like this. But he quickly recovered his composure, stepping forward to block their path. Excuse me, Julian said, his voice cold and authoritative. Can I see your invitations? Maya handed her card over. Here you go. Julian checked it off. Maya Green. You're clear. He then turned his gaze to Summer, his eyes running down her form before hardening. And yours? I didn't receive a physical card, Summer said, her voice calm and steady. But I received an email confirmation from the department chair, Dr. Sterling. I'm sorry, but email confirmations are not valid tonight, Julian lied. Smoothly, crossing his arms. The physical invitations were sent out to prevent gatecrashers. Without a physical card, I cannot let you enter. You'll have to leave. Scarlett, standing a few feet back, took a sip of her champagne, her eyes shining with triumph. Yes. Go on, cry. Argue. Make a fool of yourself. Dylan, however, stepped forward, his face pale. Julian, wait. She's in our class. She's definitely on the list. I saw her name on. Dylan, stay out of this, Scarlett whispered sharply, grabbing his arm and pulling him back. He's just doing his job. Summer looked at Julian. She saw the subtle flick of his eyes toward Scarlett. And immediately understood what was happening. She didn't look flustered. She didn't raise her voice. Are you sure about that? Summer asked quietly. I am the head of the student committee, Julian said arrogantly, raising his chin. My word is final. Please step aside, or I will have security remove you. Remove who, Julian? A deep, commanding voice sounded from behind them. Julian's arrogant expression instantly vanished, replaced by a look of panic. He turned around to see Dr. Sterling, the head of the NYU Fine Arts Department, walking toward them. Beside Dr. Sterling was an older, elegantly dressed Woman, none other than Eleanor Vance, Julian's aunt and one of the most prominent art collectors in New York. Dr. Sterling. Aunt Eleanor. Julian stammered, bowing his head slightly. I was just handling a small issue at the door. Someone trying to enter without a physical invitation. Eleanor Vance ignored her nephew completely. Her eyes had landed on Summer, and her face lit up with a brilliant, warm smile. Summer, darling. Eleanor exclaimed, stepping past Julian and taking Summer's hands in hers. I was hoping you'd make it. Your professor, my brother, hasn't stopped talking about your still life piece. He sent me a photo of it, and I simply had to meet the young genius behind it. The entrance area fell into a stunned silence. Scarlett's champagne glass trembled in her hand. Aunt Eleanor? The Eleanor Vance. Who owns 3 galleries in Manhattan? Julian's face drained of color. Aunt Eleanor, you know her? Of course I know of her, you foolish boy, Eleanor snapped, giving Julian a sharp look. Dr. Sterling and I personally added her to the VIP guest list. Her physical invitation was hand-delivered to the department office because we wanted to make sure she received it. Why was she being stopped? Dr. Sterling frowned, looking at Julian with severe disappointment. Julian, is this how you run the committee? Stopping our most promising freshman at the door. Over a paper card? Dr. Vance's brother personally vouched for Miss Reed's talent. She is the highlight of tonight's showcase. Julian felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. I apologize, Dr. Sterling. There must have been a misunderstanding with the list. I'll update it immediately. Please do, Dr. Sterling said coldly. Eleanor smiled warmly at Summer. Come, my dear. I want to introduce you to a few colleagues of mine. They're very eager to see your portfolio. Summer smiled politely. Thank you, Mrs. Vance. It's an honor. As Summer walked into the main room, flanked by the department head and one of the city's most influential art patrons, she passed Scarlett. She didn't say a word. She didn't even look at her. But the sheer, crushing weight of her victory was louder than any insult. Scarlett stood frozen, her chest heaving, while Dylan stared at Summers, retreating back with a mixture of awe and deep, agonizing sorrow. He had never felt so small, so pathetic, and so completely irrelevant in his entire life. The main hall of the Soho loft was dazzling. High-end lighting illuminated the student art pieces displayed on temporary white walls. Groups of wealthy collectors, critics, and older students huddled around, sipping champagne and discussing the works. At the very center of the exhibition, in the place of honor, was Summer's oil painting. It was beautifully framed in dark wood. Under the spotlight, the rich, warm copper pot and the velvet-like texture of the peaches seemed to glow from within. A small crowd had already gathered around it, whispering in hushed, admiring tones. The light is extraordinary, a prominent critic remarked, nodding slowly. It has the weight of the old masters, but with a modern, fresh sensibility. Who did you say the artist was? A freshman? Unbelievable. A few yards away, Scarlett's painting was hung in a corner. It was technically correct, but completely ignored. People walked past it without a second glance. Scarlett's hands were shaking. She had spent the last hour watching Summer being introduced to gallery owners, laughing politely at their jokes, and gracefully accepting their praise. She's ruining everything, Scarlett whispered, her voice cracking with hysteria. She took my spotlight. She took my friends. She took my status. She's just a fraud. A fat, lazy pig who got lucky. Penelope looked around nervously. Scarlett, calm down. People are looking. I don't care. Scarlett hissed. Her gaze drifted to the buffet table nearby, where glasses of red wine were being served. A dark, desperate plan formed in her mind. If Summer's painting was destroyed, she wouldn't be the star anymore. The critics would have nothing to look at. Summer would be devastated, and the spotlight would naturally return to the other talented students, like her. Watch this, Scarlett whispered, her eyes flashing with a manic light. She grabbed a large, full glass of Cabernet Sauvignon from a passing waiter's tray. She began to walk toward the crowd surrounding Summer's painting. Dylan, who had been watching her from a distance, saw the look on her face and the glass in her hand. A sudden wave of panic hit him. He knew that look. It was the same look she had right before she had driven that freckled girl out of their high school. Scarlett, stop! Dylan yelled, rushing forward. But Scarlett was already moving. As she approached the crowd, she pretended to trip on the edge of a rug. Oh, she shrieked, tilting her body forward and hurling the dark red wine directly towards Summer's canvas. The crowd gasped. Several people jumped back. But Summer, who had been standing nearby talking to Eleanor Vance, had a sharp reflex developed from years of dodging her mother's attempts to snatch her snacks. Hearing the sudden shriek and the rustle of silk, she reacted instantly. She didn't try to protect herself. Instead, she stepped forward, grabbed a nearby decorative metal display easel, and swung it like a shield. Clang! The heavy metal easel intercepted the trajectory of the wine. The dark red liquid splashed violently against the metal, dripping harmlessly onto the concrete floor. Not a single drop touched the canvas. The room went dead silent. The sudden, loud noise of the metal impact had drawn the attention of every single guest in the loft. Music seemed to fade. All eyes locked onto the scene. Scarlett was sprawled on her hands and knees on the floor, her emerald green dress stained with the residual wine, her hair messy, looking disheveled and frantic. Summer stood perfectly still, holding the metal easel with one hand, her velvet dress spotless, her face calm and completely unbothered. "Are you okay, Scarlett?" Summer asked, her voice clear and carrying across the quiet room. "That was quite a fall. You should be more careful around the artwork. You did this on purpose." Scarlett screamed, losing her mind completely. In front of the high society crowd, she pointed a shaking finger at Summer. "She tripped me. She's jealous of me. She's always been jealous of me. She's a fat, ugly pig who got plastic surgery to look like this. Don't let her fool you. She's a monster." The guests whispered in shock. "Who is that girl? How vulgar. Is she drunk? She tried to ruin a student's painting. I saw her throw the glass." Dar. Sterling rushed forward, his face red with fury. "Security. Get this student out of here immediately." Two beefy security guards stepped up, grabbing Scarlett by her arms and lifting her off the floor. "Let me go." Scarlett shrieked, kicking her legs. "Dylan. Help me. Tell them she's the monster." Dylan stood in the crowd, frozen. He looked at Scarlett, who looked completely unhinged, her beautiful facade shattered to reveal an ugly, bitter core. Then he looked at Summer, who stood tall, elegant, and completely untouched by the malice thrown her way. For the first time in his life, Dylan saw things clearly. He didn't move. He didn't say a word. He slowly stepped back, blending into the crowd, abandoning Scarlett to her fate. "Dylan. Dylan." Scarlett screamed as she was dragged out of the double glass doors, her voice fading into the noisy streets of Soho. The fallout from the gala was swift and merciless. A video of the incident, captured by a student who had been filming the exhibition, went viral on TikTok overnight. It showed Scarlett's calculated trip, the dramatic splash of the wine, Summer's incredibly cool reflex with the easel, and Scarlett's subsequent screaming meltdown. By the next afternoon, Scarlett's social media accounts were flooded with thousands of critical comments. Her brand sponsors dropped her within hours. Worse, the university administration launched an official disciplinary investigation into her attempt to destroy university property, the student artwork. She was suspended for the rest of the semester, her dreams of being the NYU Fine Arts Queen shattered before they had even begun. As for Dylan, his reputation in the department was completely ruined by association. He was isolated, ignored by his peers, and spent his days sitting alone in the library, staring at the empty seat next to him. One evening, as Summer was packing up her brushes in the quiet studio, she heard the door creak open. She didn't turn around, continuing to clean her palette. "Summer," a quiet, trembling voice called out. It was Dylan. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes, his clothes wrinkled. He looked like a shell of his former self. "Summer, please," he said, stepping closer. "I need to talk to you. I've officially broken up with Scarlett. I realized she was toxic. I was blind, Summer. I was so caught up in trying to fit in trying to be cool, that I hurt the only person who actually cared about me." Summer didn't stop cleaning. She wiped the oil off her palette knife with a rag. "I remember when we were kids," Dylan continued, his voice cracking with emotion. "You used to share your snacks with me. Your parents always made sure I had a warm meal. I was so happy back then. I want to go back to that, Summer. I want to be the person who supports you. I don't care if people judge us. I want to be with you." Summer finally paused. She turned around, looking at him. Her amber eyes were calm, but there was a faint trace of pity in them. "Dylan," she said softly. "You still don't get it, do you?" Dylan blinked, confused. "Get what?" "You didn't break up with Scarlett because you realized she was toxic, Summer." said, her voice steady and precise. You broke up with her because she lost her status, her popularity, and her future here. You abandoned her the moment she became social poison. Dylan's face went pale. No, that's not. And you don't want to be with me because you care about me, Summer continued, stepping closer. You want to be with me because I'm pretty now. Because people look at me. Because being with me would make you look good. She looked at him, her gaze cutting through his desperate excuses. If I was still 170 pounds, if I was still that little ball eating ribs at the class dinner, would you be standing here right now, apologizing? Dylan opened his mouth, but no words came out. His throat was dry. He wanted to lie. He wanted to say yes, of course I would. But he couldn't. The truth was too heavy, too damning. You wouldn't, Summer said simply, a quiet smile on her lips. You would still be laughing at Scarlett's jokes. You would still be calling me a pig behind my back. She picked up her bag and slung it over her shoulder. She walked past him, her shoulder brushing his lightly. Goodbye, Dylan. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. But you won't find it with me. She walked out of the studio, the heavy wooden door clicking shut behind her. Dylan stood in the empty room, surrounded by half-finished paintings and the smell of turpentine, completely alone. He let out a ragged breath, a single tear slipping down his cheek as he realized that some bridges, once burned, could never be rebuilt. The autumn air in Greenwich Village was crisp and cool. The leaves of the trees in Washington Square Park had turned a brilliant shade of gold and amber, matching the color of Summer's eyes. She was sitting at a small outdoor table at a quiet, family-run Italian bakery she had discovered a few blocks from campus. On the table in front of her was a massive, beautifully decorated slice of strawberry shortcake, fluffy sponge cake, thick layers of fresh cream, and ruby red strawberries glazed in sweet syrup. Beside it was a hot cup of black coffee. Oh my gosh, that looks incredible, Maya sighed, sitting down across from her and setting her backpack on the floor. Are you sure you can eat that? What about your diet? Summer laughed, picking up a silver fork. Maya, my diet was to get healthy, not to starve myself. I run 5 miles every morning, and I spend 3 hours in the gym. My body is healthy now. And a healthy body deserves a delicious reward. She took a large bite of the cake. The sweet, creamy texture melted on her tongue, the tartness of the strawberries perfectly balancing the rich cream. A soft, blissful sigh escaped her lips. Her eyes closed in pure happiness, her face glowing with the simple, innocent joy of a true foodie. Around them, several people passing by stopped to look. But they weren't looking with mockery or malicious curiosity. They were staring at a girl of unparalleled, stunning beauty, eating a slice of cake with such genuine, radiant happiness that she looked like a portrait of joy itself. A young photographer nearby slowly raised his camera, capturing the moment, the soft golden light of autumn, the beautiful girl, and her sweet, content smile. Summer didn't notice the camera. She didn't notice the whispers of admiration. She just took another bite of her cake, completely at peace with herself, her life, and the sweet future waiting ahead of her.